Hello guys, so today we'll be talking about president. That is the part 3 of the Lakshmikant. I'll be reading line by line and explaining you all the topics. So article 52 to 78 in part 5 of the constitution. Part 5 of the constitution, but this what we are following is of part 3. So part 5 of the constitution talks about the union executive. So who all are in the union executive? We will see the president, the vice president and the prime minister, the council of ministers and the attorney general of India. The president is the head of Indian state. He is a citizen of the India, the first citizen. Always remember, president is the first citizen of the India. First, the very first. The wife of the president is the first lady, and the president himself is the first citizen of India and acts as a symbol of unity, integrity, solidarity of the nation. So, who all fall under the union executive? So, there are five people: president, the vice president, prime minister, the council of minister, and the attorney general. Let's move forward. We'll also compare this with the state in my next lecture. So how does the election of president is happening? Let us see. The president is elected not directly but by the people whom we elect. All right. So the president is elected not directly by the people but by the members of electoral college. Who all are there in the electoral college? Let us see. The elected member of both the houses of the parliament. Both the houses of the parliament's elected member. Remember, elected, not the nominated. Elected member of both the houses. Elected member of the legislative assemblies. Legislative assemblies of the states, legislative assemblies of all the states, not the legislative council. Council is the upper house of the states, assembly is the lower house. So legislative assembly we are talking about. So the elected member of the both the houses, elected member of the legislative assemblies of the states, and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of union territories. So you have some of the union territories also have legislative assemblies, such as Delhi and Puducherry. I think we will also be taking into condition now the J&K. Soon there will be a provision to make an amendment to include them also. So first of all, you have to observe one thing: all the elected members of parliament, state and UTs are taken into the consideration of the electoral college also. Thus, the nominated members of both the House of the Parliament, the nominated member of the state legislative assemblies, and the members of both elected and nominated of state legislative councils in the case of bicameral legislative, and the nominated members of legislative councils of Delhi and Puducherry do not participate in the election. So, in any case, first of all, the council, legislative council, is nowhere in the scene. Secondly, no nominated member is a part of electoral college. You should know the reason why: because the president himself nominates the nominated members. So obviously those members cannot be included into the electoral college of the presidents. Only the elected members of both the houses, elected members of legislative assemblies, and elected members of the legislative assemblies of the UTs are included into the electoral college of the president. Where is an when an assembly is dissolved, the members cease to be qualified to vote. Whereas when supposedly assembly is dissolving of some state, so the members of that particular assembly are not qualifying to be voting before, even if those have been dissolved before the presidential election, so they cannot obviously vote. When an assembly is dissolved, the members cease to be qualified to vote in presidential election, even if a fresh election to dissolved assembly are held not before the presidential election. So even if जो आपके fresh elections whatever will be conducted to the dissolved assembly are not held, those fresh elections are not held before the presidential election, so obviously the current council will hold the position, but even then we will not be calling them. That is supposedly on 25th of January. The current party dissolves of a certain state, and the presidential election is on the 27th of January. So till 25th to 27th, obviously the current party will remain in power, the current government will remain in power till the new fresh elections have been conducted. Yet the one who has been dissolved on 25 will not be called for the presidential election, because now the people do not want their say to be included into the election of the president. So the constitution provides that there shall be uniformity in the scale of representation of different states, as well as parity between the states as whole and union at the election of the president. So we wanted a parity, hence we had a system of proportional representation. To achieve this, a number of vote which each elected member of the legislative assembly of each of the parliament is entitled to cast as election shall be determined in the following manner. So each state shall have different value of the vote. So one multiple vote, so every elected member of the legislative assembly of a state shall have as many votes as there are multiple of 1000s. So what is the meaning of 1000? Means for every 1000 there shall be one particular vote. Alright, in the question to obtain, so this is a formula that you need not memorize or something, but you should know that it is a representative body, the electoral college, and as well as the elections are a representation of the entire thing. So the presidential election is held in accordance with the system of proportional representation. It is a proportion, that is, as many people are there in a constituency representing the MP will be the people who will be electing the president. Supposedly in UP you have the maximum seats, right, in as being an MP. So UP has 80 seats, let's suppose. For 80 seats there will be a proportional representation of UP in the election of president as well. That is, UP will hold a lot more weightage than other with respect to the seats they have. This system ensures that a successful candidate is returned by absolute majority of the votes, and it is obviously done by the secret ballot. So this ensures that the population which has elected UP's elections have been conducted. So the population which has elected UP's party have the majority say in the election of the president as well. So this is basically a cascading effect, right? The one who elects UP or maybe any other state will be now electing the president. A candidate, in order to be declared elected to the office of president, must secure a fixed quota of votes. So a person to be voted to power to president shall have a fixed quota. So what is the quota? The number of valid votes upon 1 plus 1. That is the number of valid votes polled. That is the number of candidates who are standing, and upon the number of candidates who are standing. So generally we have seen just two or one or two members are generally standing for the election of the president. So here you have 1 plus 1. So 1 is the number of seat that we have, and 1 plus is as a question that we add. So a candidate, in order to be declared elected to the office of president, must secure a fixed quota of votes. The quota of votes is determined by dividing the total number of valid votes, that is the valid votes of all the MPs, MLAs, all those elected members that we were talking about who have casted the vote, upon divided by the number of candidates to be elected. So we just want one candidate to be elected for the vote for the seat of president. So upon 1 plus 1 as the quotient that we are adding, that is a formula. So formula can be expressed as this. Hence we see each member of the electoral college is only given one ballot paper. So you just have one ballot paper. Supposedly you have two members for the election of president standing, A and B. So you write whether you want A to be a first preference or B to be a first preference. Then you write second preference, third preference. So supposedly if there are 5 members, A, B, C, D, so you write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 according to your wish. So each member of the electoral college is given one ballot paper, and each voter, while casting his vote, is required to indicate his preference by marking 1, 2, 3, 4 against the names of the candidate. This means that the voter can indicate as many preferences there are in the frame. In the first place, in the first phase, the first preference votes are counted, and in case of a candidate secures the required quota in the first phase itself, supposedly this is the candidate, suppose 10 are the total number of votes that were to be polled upon 1 plus 1, that is 2 plus 1, so 10 upon 2 is 5 plus 1 6. Supposedly if any candidate automatically gains 6 in the very first phase, so that person is declared as the winner. However, if the nobody gains a fixed quota of the seats, then what do we do is, supposedly A, B, C, D are ranked as 1, 2, 3, 4. So now A has won somewhere majority, but let's say D has won the least number of votes. So what we'll do is we'll take the slips of D, and then we'll eliminate D, and then we'll see in all the slips who have mentioned D as the first person, who is the second preference in the one in where D is the first person. So we will put those votes in A, B, C, D. Are you getting me? Supposedly if you have, I'll show you. Supposedly if you have A, B, C and D, and let's say 10 people have voted for, suppose this is your ballot paper, all right, and here you have A, B, C and D, and you have voted something like, I vote D as of my first preference, I vote B as second preference, C as third preference, and A as fourth preference. Some other sheet you have the similar kind of thing, all right, and then you have A, B, C and D. So we see A is the first preference, B, C is the second preference, third, and you have this as fourth preference, the D. Alright, so supposedly A has won 10 people voting for him first, B as let's say 6 people voted for him, C as 6 vote, let's say 3 votes for C and 2 votes for D. Alright, so now we see that D has won the least number of people voting for him or her to be the first one. So what we'll do is we'll cancel D here and we'll see whoever has got second preference here, so we'll add here. So B has got the second preference here, so we'll add this one here. Then we'll fill C for others. So similarly we'll keep on adding till we get one winner. Understood? Till we get one as the person who is the winner, we will keep on doing this. So this is how it happens. Supposedly, the voter, while casting his vote, is required to indicate his preference by marking 1, 2, 3, 4 against the names of the candidate. This means that the voter can indicate as many preferences there in the fray. In the first phase, the first preference votes are counted. In case a candidate secured votes in this phase, he is declared elected. Otherwise, the process of transfer of votes, this is important, transfer of votes take place, is set in motion. The ballot of the candidate securing the least number of the first preference votes are cancelled. That is, the ballot or least number of first preference, as I already said, are cancelled. So this one, if we see, so this particular thing has been cancelled and the votes have been transferred here. So this has been, here you have your transferring of vote, you see, transferred. All right, and the votes have been transferred. They are transferred to the first preference of the other. This process continues till all the candidates secure the required quota. Till we do not get one single candidate requiring the quota, we do this exercise. All the doubts and disputes in connection with the election of president are required into and decided by Supreme Court. So Supreme Court is the one who will decide whether there is any misinterpretation of any law or anything that is happening during the election of the president. And if it happens to be there, the final decision is being taken always by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is the only body which can inquire into the election of the president. Remember this. Election of a person as president cannot be challenged on the ground that the electoral college was incomplete. So if people do not come to vote, that is not the problem of the electoral college, since you were given a chance, but you however did not take advantage of that particular exercise. So you cannot challenge that the electoral college was incomplete, even if out of 100 MLA, MP and everybody only 2 come, so that cannot be challenged on this ground. That is, existence of any vacancy among the members of the electoral college cannot be challenged, but it is generally seen that everybody comes to obviously vote for our honorable president. If the election of a president as a person as a president is declared void by the Supreme Court, acts done by him before such declaration cannot be invalidated. Supposedly, if a person has been elected as a president and now he works for 10 days, and after 10 days Supreme Court gives a final verdict that the elections are void and cannot be considered as validated. So what will happen next is that all the decisions taken by the president in those 10 days will be considered valid and will not be reversed. Some members of the Constituent Assembly criticize the system of this indirect election of the president as undemocratic. They said this is an indirect election of the president and these are undemocratic, as this affected the idea of direct elections. But however, we have obviously some reasons for doing this indirect elections. So constitution makers chose indirect elections for 3 reasons, basically for the following reasons. Let's check out which. The indirect elections of the president is in harmony with the parliamentary system of government. First of all, we follow the parliamentary system of government, and this is definitely in harmony with that envisaged in the constitution. Under this system, the president is the only a nominal executive. It is only a nominal executive, that is a ceremonial head, and the real powers are actually vested in the council of ministers headed by the prime minister, not the president. He is just a ceremonial head. He is just asked to sign after the advice given by the council of ministers. He or she cannot take any decision without the advice. Basically, president does not have a lot many discretionary choices. He has to be, his decisions are to be taken only after advices given by Supreme Court or by the council of ministers, or whenever it is required, whichever body is required to be advising him. And the direct elect, it would have been anomalous to the president elected directly by the people and not giving him any real power. And since we are just choosing him as a ceremonial head, as a person who will just be a person as a signatory member, he will be there. So if he is not given any real powers, how can we give him the luxury of I mean, not the luxury, but the real elections? How can we get the real elections done for him when we have not given him any real power? The direct election of president would have been very costly and time and energy consuming due to vast size of the electorate. We have a lot of people in India, and if we keep on doing this, that we have a separate election of president, we have a separate election of prime minister, we have separate elections of everybody, it is very time and energy consuming, and this is unwarranted, keeping in view that this he is only a symbolic head, that we have already said multiple times that he is only a symbolic head. Some members of the Constituent Assembly suggested that the president should be elected by the members of the two houses of the parliament alone. In fact, some members also suggested that elected members of the two houses, only the two houses of the parliament should get their business done by electing the president, and no state and all should also be called. The makers of the constitution did not prefer this, as the parliament dominated by one party, because the Lok Sabha is generally formed by the winning party. So they will obviously dominate and would invariably choose a candidate from a party, and such a president would not represent the entire state of the union territory and the India. Hence, the present system, that is the elected member of the parliament, the states and the UTs, will make the president a representative body, and that is states and unions shall be equally representative. Further, it was pointed out in the Constituent Assembly that the expression proportional representation, as you see in the case of presidential election, is a misnomer. That is, it is nothing to be said as a proportional representative, because generally what happens is only two people are standing for the elections of president, or sometimes it is unopposed and it is only a single person who is standing for the election of president. So how can you call it a proportional? It is a normal election that happens. In case of presidential election, it is a misnomer. The proportional representation takes place where two or more seats are to be filled. When you have two or more seats to be filled, then you can say that it is a proportional representation. But in case of president, the vacancy is only one. You just have a single vacancy. It could either be called a preferential or an alternate vote system. You can call it as a preferential or an alternate vote system. Similarly, the expression single transferable vote is also objected on the ground that there is no voter has a single vote. Every voter has a plural vote. Everybody is given a plural vote. Everybody gives a 1, 2, 3, 4. So these you cannot say as a transferable vote. Everybody is actually giving multiple votes. So this is a misnomer as per many other uh, other specialists and jurists and many other people. But however, in India we do follow this system, and critics obviously have the work of criticizing. They have given really good criticism, but we'll take all these into consideration. Let us see qualification, oath and condition for the qualification as for the election. So who all are eligible to become president? So the person to be eligible to be as president should fulfill the following conditions. First of all, he should be a citizen of India. Obviously, if he is not a citizen, he cannot be, and he can be a citizen by naturalized way or by birth. So naturalized birth, I have talked in some other lecture. You can see that lecture. And either he is by birth or by naturalization. That is, he has stayed here for some time, that you can see the lecture and you can understand. He should have completed at least 35 years age. Obviously, some wisdom needs to be there when you're the president of a big country. So you need to be at least of 35 years of age to be elected as a president and to be qualified for the election of Lok Sabha. Now, why is this Lok Sabha? Obviously, because we are always talking about elected members. So elected members obviously are the ones who actually fulfill the seats of Lok Sabha. So that is why we always say elected meaning Lok Sabha. Hence, he should be a qualified member for the election as a member of Lok Sabha. He should not hold any office of profit under government or any state government or any local authority or any public authority. Obviously, he should not have any office of profit anywhere. If he holds any office of profit, then it will be difficult for a person to be elected as the president. A sitting vice president or president of the union or the governor of any state of union is also not deemed to hold any office of profit. Obviously, when you are at such a gazetted position, you are not expected to hold any position. Now, here's a condition that you need to understand. If the parliament or the law states that a president or a VP or maybe the prime minister or anybody can hold such a position, then it is allowed. You need not think that it is not allowed. If a VP or the president is given this particular liberty to hold this office by the parliament itself, then you can hold. Then you cannot say that he is holding office of profit, then he need not deem to be a president. So you see that he cannot hold any office of profit. And also there are further nomination of candidate for election of the office of president must be subscribed by at least 50 electorates. So there are 50 people who will be giving a testimony that yes, this person is absolutely right with respect to his background. And as we can see that every candidate has to make a security deposit of 15,000. So every elector also has to have a person who is guaranteeing the elector also. So the first of all 50 persons will be electing, giving a testimony that the 50 people are giving the testimony that the current president is having a clean background, and then those 50 people will also have electors. Those are the seconders. Those 50 other 50 people will be giving guarantee to the 50 electors. So every candidate has to make a security deposit of 15,000 in the Reserve Bank of India. So let me show you what I'm talking about the electors. Supposedly, this is the person who has to be elected as the president. Okay, so he will have 50 electors like this. Okay, so these are the 50 electors that he has, and these are the electors. Okay, now these 50, these all of them will also have seconders. So these are the people who will be giving guarantee of these people. So they will be giving guarantee of these people. These are called seconders. Okay, and he is the president, and these are the electors. So these are electors, these are seconders, and he is the president. Understood? So every candidate has to make a security deposit of rupees 15,000 in Reserve Bank of India, and the scrutiny deposit, that is security deposit that you are doing, can be fortified, that is it can be nullified in case if the candidate fails to secure the 1/5 of the seats of the polls voted. So in case if you are not able to get 1/6 of the votes, then your security deposit will be fortified. 1997, the number of proposals in the seconders was 10 each, and the amount paid was 2,500. So till 1997, we had only 10 electors and 10 seconders, and only 2,500 rupees was to be deposited. After 1997, this was increased so that non-serious candidates do not come and stand for elections for president. What is the oath or affirmation by the president? Before entering upon his office, the president has to make subscribe to an oath. Now this is very important. There is a difference, huge difference between the oath of the president and the prime minister, VP, others. So see very carefully what does the president oath about and what does the prime minister takes oath about. So the president, we are talking about the president here. So the president takes oath as faithfully execute the office. He is the person who will who will swear that he will faithfully execute the office, preserve, protect and defend. Preserve, protect and defend. Again remember, it is preserve, protect and defend. Preserve, protect and defend. These are the three important terms that you need to know. Understood? So he needs to be preserving, protecting and defending. Preserving, protecting and defending the what? Constitution. The constitution. He needs to do this. Remember this very carefully, because this will be the difference between the oath of the prime minister and the president. Oh, all right. So he will be preserving, protecting and defending the constitution and the law, and he will devote himself to the service and the well-being of the people. All right. So what is the oath of the president? First of all, he will execute the office, he will preserve, protect and defend the constitution and the law, and devote himself in the service of the well-being of the people of India. Let us see what were the elections of the president till 2017. So if you see, Rajendra Prasad was elected twice. So Rajendra Prasad was elected twice, and opposition was of KT Shah and NN Shah respectively in the year 1952 and 57. S. Radhakrishnan, these three if you see, S. Radhakrishnan, Zakir Hussain and VV Giri were first the VPs, and then they stood up to the election of president. Then you have Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad. He is also known as a telephonic president. And Sanjeeva Reddy. If you want to remember, Reddy, he is always ready to become the president. So he was elected as unopposed. Remember this, he was the person who was unopposed, who was not opposed. He was elected directly. Then you have R. Venkateshwar, and these people were the ones, Venkateshwar, Shankara Dayal Sharma and K.R. Narayan. These were also the people who have been elected as president from the post of VP before. And then you have APJ Abdul Kalam, Pratibha Patil, Pranab Mukherjee and Ramnath Kovind is our current president. The oath of the office of the president is administered by the Chief Justice of India. So who administers the oath? That is the Chief Justice of India. So in case if something happens, let's say our president is not well or is ill, who will discharge the duties? First of all, it will be going to the VP, then it will go to CGI. In case if CGI is also not there, then the senior most judge of the Supreme Court shall be coming and dispensing his duty. So the oath of the president of to the office of president is administered by the CGI in his absence, and the senior most judge of the Supreme Court is available. In case if CGI is absent, so the senior most judge of the Supreme Court comes and administers the oath of the president. Any other person acting as the president or discharging the function of the president also undertakes a similar oath or affirmation. So even if for a single day a person is acting as the president, will also have to discharge the same function as the president and has to take a similar oath or affirmation. These are few important points for the conditions of president, which will be following in the next lecture. Thank you.